Violet waste no time. Violet waste zero time in inviting people. So tomorrow we have also Ask Your Guides, and we'll be speaking on mindfulness and technology. So um, I love it. I love it. Hey, Rachel. Um, welcome, welcome. Oh, cool. I've been with Ryan Grimes for about 7 years. He's pretty cool. He's awesome. Alexa, hello. Suleiman, hello. Hello, Suleiman. How are you? So, shall we start? Shall we start, Andrew? Are you ready?
I think I'm ready, brother.
Awesome,
Happy that
awesome, awesome,
everyone's
awesome.
here.
So also, trigger warning, today's conversation will contain conversations about abuse, perception of abuse, abandonment, sexual assault. So if that is triggering for you, um, use your discretion to know if you choose to stay with us in the space. And if you choose not to, just know that everything we discuss here is with the heart and the intention to um, create spaces for healing and understanding. Um, and if you feel like you need to exit the space, that is also okay. Put yourself first and know what is beneficial for you today. Um, so, hello, welcome. My name is Alejandro. I'm a health and wellness coach, mindfulness and meditation teacher, trauma informed yoga instructor with a heart for vulnerability. And today, in Ask Your Guides Men's Edition, we have Andrew all the way from Massachusetts. Andrew, how are you today?
I'm good, Alejandro. Thank you so much.
It is Andrew is Andrew's back. He's been here with us before. And today's topic is on healing the inner boy. And as we begin to dig in deeper into what it means to do just that, to help our inner child heal, I want us to sort of paint the picture. So I'll start by painting the picture of how I grew up, and then Andrew, I'll pass it on to you. But I grew up in a single parent household. My mom raised me, and it's interesting because I say a lot, my mom raised me by herself, which is not 100% accurate. I lived only with my mom, but there has always been a village of people around us who helped raise me. I grew up in a religious household, so our church family was very instrumental to my upbringing. I still have my church grandma, who is the only grandma I have alive in my life, who still loves me and calls me and encourages me, and sends me my $25 for birthday and Christmas every single year. Um, so although I grew up in a fairly healthy household with a single parent, I also had a village of people who helped raise me. My my dad, my biological dad, was presently absent, meaning he was around when he had enough money to splurge on weekend getaways and horseback riding, and um, or he needed help doing the backyard and and washing his car and cleaning his car. Other than that, he was not around as often. So out of that, a lot of feelings of abandonment came, but we'll touch more into that. Um, but that's sort of the picture of how little Alejandro grew up. Single mom, a beautiful village around me who encouraged me and believed in me and my talents, um, and a dad that was there every once in a while, every 3 months, every 4 months, every 6 months, I had a amazing stepfather. My mom remarried when I was 4 years old, and a year later, he passed away in a car accident. So again, um, a beautiful father figure, a man that was bigger than life. Quite literally, the man was like 6'5", big guy, and beautiful personality, and loved us unconditionally. And suddenly he was gone. So the feelings of abandonment and the feelings of feeling left behind sort of lingered. Um, so so yeah, and as I grew up, um, not knowing that this was happening really, but a lot of men came into my life and sort of became surrogate father figures as I grew up. In high school, I had a coach who was really my leadership teacher. He wasn't my actual coach in sports, um, but for a semester, he truly guided me towards graduation and whatnot. But yeah, that's how I grew up and in the environment that I grew up in. And of course, there's so much more that happened in between, before and after. But what about you, Andrew? What does the picture look like for you?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think I grew up in a very typical suburban household with a loving core family unit, mother, father, brother, sister. Um, yeah, I mean, my mother was a stay-at-home mom. My father was a high school principal or vice principal, and you know, active community member. And we all played sports and just uh, like quintessential typical upbringing. Nothing out of the ordinary.
How hindsight is always 2020. How does your upbringing and this the root of who you are as a person, how does that later on in life, as you begin to establish your own family, how does that play a role in your own journey?
Yeah, that's fascinating. So, I got married, I guess, around 30 something, and I have an 18-year-old daughter. But I remember saying that I will never parent the way my parents parented. And that was like at the forefront of my parenting of I understand, and I hadn't even begun a healing journey yet, but I understood that there were things that never meshed, that never sat right, that never felt right. Um, and so, you know, I can't remember um, ever being hugged or told that I was loved.
Mm,
Even though I grew up in a loving household, there was no physical contact. There was no open conversations. And especially I'm the youngest, right? Um, I'm the youngest of three, but my father's the youngest of 17. My mother's the youngest of six. Like, different generations. So when I was starting my family, it was hugs, kisses nonstop. Doesn't matter. Public, doesn't matter. And then, um, once you begin your healing journey, and we're healing that newest trauma, right? That the most recent, and we start backtracking. And you got to start looking at those things. And that's when my heart's going off right now. And that's when you got to really look in that mirror. You got to really kind of want to do the work around that. And fortunately, I was in a place that I had no choice but to step in and do some work, right? I had a choice, right? We all have a choice. I chose me, right? I chose to live.
Right.
And then you get into the things you have to heal. And so working backwards on that, um, you know, in understanding how my parents parented, and saying I'm not going to parent the way they parented, well, I'm just putting a whole new set of traumas on my kid, right? It's life. It's life, and it's the cycle of life. So I'm sure we're going to delve into more about the other stuff, but I think that answers the question.
It's interesting how how sometimes in our attempts to do better, our motivation it's still rooted in pain and hurt,
Mhm.
and we're sort of we end up causing similar harm to what we're trying to avoid. Um, and
Mhm.
the thing is, I want to make it clear that that is okay. That none of us, that we're not perfect, that we're still human, and that we're all doing the best we can with what we have. I know for me, speaking of styles of parenting, I promised myself. So I am not a father. I'm not a father in the biological sense. I think I in the work that we do, we a lot of times, especially with working with youth and working with me also now that I work with men who are and have been incarcerated, we find ourselves sort of kind of maybe very much parenting and reparenting people into healing. But that's a whole we'll get to that hopefully as we progress in the conversation. But I also promised myself that I was not going to parent the way my father did, which
Mhm.
was not being present. And I remember at 17, 18, reading a book, The Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman, and having this beautiful aha moment that my dad loved me the only way he knew how to. I, at the age of 17, 18, after hating my dad for so long, for the abandonment, for only being there when he had money, for only being there when he had the best of the best to give. I had perceived that as my dad wanting to buy my love, when in reality, the only way he knew to love me was through giving things, because my dad has his own backstory.
Yeah.
He was never taught to love. My
Mm.
dad, I know now as an adult, my dad was the product of a sexual assault, hated by his own mother. And he becomes a father, and there was no way he knew how to give that hug because he never received that hug. There was no way he knew how to say, I love you, because he never heard, I love you. So the only way he still today knows how to show affection is by giving stuff. So when he doesn't have stuff to give, he's not around. He has no way to love. Um, so I promised myself I will never, ever do what my dad did. And I became the exact opposite of who he was, to the extreme. So I became very overbearing, very overprotective, and very insecure in my attachment styles, because especially with men, and this is in all relationships, romantic relationships, with friends, even in school. I was a very anxious attachment style to men. Women were a safe space because I always had my mom, I always had my grandmother, I always had beautiful women who upheld me and were a secure space. Men, I did they're going to leave. So so it was a very interesting journey through life as as I grew up, and then later on in life when I find myself with two choices. Now I had two choices. I always share that I had when I lost it all and I found myself at the end of myself, I had the choice of ending it all or beginning again.
Mm,
And that beginning again was the healing journey. I because of the people who helped me and raised me, I knew that there was purpose within me. I might have not known what that looked like, but I knew as deep calls on to deep, I knew there was more. So ending it was not really, although it was an option, it was not really a choice. I just had to heal and I had to face all the darkness that I had ignored for so long. Um, so so speaking of the choice of healing, um, what are practices that have helped you reconnect and care for that young Andrew that that didn't hear the I love you or receive the hug? And I know both of us started our healing journey as adults. You already had your family. I again, I started my healing, my intentional healing journey at around 22, 23. Um, so so how do you get to the point where you are faced with the choice, I either healed or I not? And how do you choose to heal for in your story, in your timeline?
yeah, it wasn't even a thought of do I heal, right? Because I had no idea what like healing. I don't even know what that is. This is a decision to live or to die,
Mm,
right? It's that simple. And this happened, right? I'm 48 years old when this takes place. My whole life just falls apart, just completely and utterly falls apart. Um, and I didn't know what to do. And so I am a veteran special ed teacher that runs behavioral programs, and I am a Hall of Fame volleyball coach. I know what to do, except I didn't know what to do in my own personal life, right? And the first thing I did was I reached out and asked for help, right? I made two phone calls and I called my teacher that I had taken some classes with, just kind of like meditation, breath work, little yoga, but she is the penultimate teacher. And so I called her and said, I need help. And I called my therapist, who I had never worked with, and I said, I need help. So for me, it was that vulnerability piece of stepping out of what was typical, right? And saying, somebody help me. I have no idea what to do. And so stepping into that, um, in meditation saved my life. I say this on every one of my lives. Meditation saved my life because it was the only time in my life that I had ever experienced peace. And through the practice of meditation, I got to know me. And then realized that probably from the time I was 8, 9, 10, I have been acting my entire life to be loved, to fit in. Um, I am the perfect mirror for anyone, or I have been, I should say. Because if you put me in a situation, I'm gonna figure it out in no time and what is needed to be accepted in this situation. Um, Only to feel so lonely my entire life, so
yeah,
lonely.
yeah.
Um, and so, in this moment of age 48, and Ryan asked what happened at 48. So at 48, my marriage fell apart. right? It's, the marriage falls apart. I've got a house. I live on Nantucket. It's a beautiful island. It's a vacation island, but I live here. And so I've got a house, I've got a wife, I've got a daughter, we've got a restaurant. I'm a teacher, I'm a coach. I've got basically everything you could want. We've got the club memberships and we're taking vacations and everything is amazing. I'm drinking fine wines and smoking cigars. And I think I've made it. I think I've got everything. And then boom, it's gone. Everything's gone. Friends disappear. Family stops talking to me. Wife won't talk to me. I'm like, what just happened? I have been literally abandoned. And so I have this choice to make, right? Because if the conversations had happened previously, I never heard them. But in this moment, I said to myself, if what's been said to me about I need to change, that I'm the problem, I'm going to do it. Because when the universe spoke at this moment at age 48, I heard it loud and clear. And, it was in that moment that I chose me. I chose to live and to make the changes that I needed to make if they needed to be made. I can't even be certain that they needed to be made because and I've said this in every one of my lives, I take 100% responsibility for my 50% of the relationship. But I went at this headlong of I don't like how I feel. I don't like what's happening right now. And I certainly don't like myself. And so diving into that healing led me through the different layers, the different levels, the different ages of Andrew, and led me all the way back to the young Andrew who needed the love, who needed the adult that I am now. And to do that work has been nothing short of painful. Pain, no, utterly rewarding, right? I'm not gonna lie, like healing is not like
So
it.
let's keep it 100. Healing
Yeah,
sucks.
yeah,
Healing
healing
is
is it's not glamorous by any means. It is not glamorous. Uh,
right.
but there is no way, but it is beautiful. And there's no way in a million years I
Correct.
could have ever envisioned sitting here, feeling the way I feel, talking with you and sharing this. Like this would never have happened in my mind at age 48. Because at age 48, I'm just looking to make it to the next hour. I'm just looking to make it to midnight. I'm looking to make it to 4:27 a.m. so I can wake up and go catch a sunrise every day and start my meditation. And then I got to make it until noon. And then I've got to make it 1 week in between my therapy appointments. And what do you mean I have to wait a week? This is ridiculous. Like I am by myself and it's the most disgusting feeling ever. But thankfully, there was meditation. And
Yeah.
thankfully, there was the understanding of let this shit go, all this emotion, let it fly out, sit with these feelings. Don't do anything with these feelings. Don't do anything. Just sit with them. That was a hard one. That was a hard one. And so that's kind of where it all started, right? And you're taking me right back. There's a bluff overlooking the ocean, and that's where I spent close to a year just walking that spot, man. Just walking that spot.
It's it's interesting how you bring up that as even as a young child you learn to act a certain way
Yeah. Oh,
to
100%.
to 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 fit in. I think you and I have this in common. We learned to be chameleons. We learned to wear the right mask at the right place and time to
Yeah.
be accepted. And it sounds to me like we were probably pretty popular people,
No.
and and we were likable, and everybody around us might have liked us. I know for me that was true, and I didn't even like myself. Not only because I was not being myself, but because I didn't know who I was. I had for so many years worn the masks of that I believe people wanted me to wear. The good church boy, the 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 loud leader in school that would encourage students in seventh grade to skip class to go to the beach. Um, and um, and we would do it. And that was being cool. And in the quiet of the night, when I sat in my solitude, there was such emptiness. And I look back and I read my journals. I've been journaling since I'm 13. I read my journals and I am very honest in my journals about how come it seems like everybody likes me and I still feel so lonely. Um, I
I'm going to
know.
jump in right there because I was not liked. Um,
Okay.
I projected who I wanted to be, and it was like I just was so uncomfortable with myself that I put that wall up, and if you, I was gonna cut you before you cut me, right? Like I grew up in the 80s, and this is just how it was, right? Like brutal, brutal. And there was no just no sense of self whatsoever. No sense of self.
Hmm. Ryan asked, Andrew, do you think you can share what those early meditations were like? Where did your mind wander during those times?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Ryan. Those early meditations were me fighting the thoughts, and the thoughts are just simply like the negative story that I told myself, right? That nocebo effect I willed into action. All right, I've talked about this before. And it was just learning how to block or stop the thought in the moment, right? So observing it, observing the thought, and then just simply literally yelling out loud, no, I don't need you right now. Get out, over and over and over again. And then it was, okay, I'm focusing, obviously, just silent meditation. I'm focusing on the breath cycle. That's it. And then through practice of doing that constantly, of observing those negative thoughts, the negative story coming in, then I started to be able to feel them coming before they came, and I could just shake my head and they'd go away.
Mhm.
But that my mind wandered to I'm not worthy. I don't deserve love. Of it was a victim mentality, right? Of why does this continue to happen to me? I didn't understand patterns. I didn't understand my conditioning. I didn't understand codependency. Um, yeah. So those early meditations, my first meditation was the most beautiful thing I've ever had in my life, right? It was after a yoga class where we had a prolonged savasana, and it just went into the cosmos, and it was the most amazing thing. And so I was smoking a lot of pot at the time, and I said to my teacher, I said, if I smoke pot, I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get there every time. I'm gonna be like high and just it's gonna be beautiful. And she said, oh, 100%. And then she goes, but if you stop smoking pot and you meditate every single day, you'll get to that same space and then go higher on your own. And I never picked up marijuana again.
I I discovered meditation through yoga. I've shared this story several times. My friend Kevin, who is a yoga instructor, invited me to a very early 4:30 in the morning yoga class. And I was really already in my healing journey, going through some working through some past abuse and very raw. I was in a very raw state. Almost again with the choice of continuing to heal or saying, you know what, it was easier when this was all under the rug. I don't know. And after some sun salutations in Savasana, I, for the first time in my 23 years of life, I felt at home in my own body. And I felt comfortable in the stillness and the silence.
Mhm.
There was there was nothing and there was everything in that moment. The reality of what I was working through was very present, yet it was not, it didn't feel like it was harming me. It almost felt, I felt whole for the first time, even with the mess. Wholeness. Sometimes we hear the word wholeness, and we see it as this sort of fulfillment of a healing journey, and I am whole when I have achieved some sort of level of growth. But wholeness in that moment for me was laying on that yoga mat in that gym and being 100% myself, even with the pain, even with the mess, even with the young me crying out loud, help me, help me. What have we done? Help me, help me. What have been done to us? We are incomplete. We are broken. It felt that way. And that was wholeness. And it was in Savasana where I found meditation, a meditative state. I know for me, I'm sorry, I know for me, um, growing up in the church and in a religious environment, um, prayer was a part of my life. So there was a practice and a discipline of meeting with myself and a higher power in a very superficial way. So when I discover meditation, um, in the beginning for me, it was a conversation, right? It was said I'm gonna pray. I guess that's what it's supposed to be. And slowly but surely, I began to explore just shutting up and listening to myself, listening to the thoughts. I know, for some of us, meditation is, we want to quiet the mind, and I felt especially in the beginning, that it was where the mind was the most active, and I had to learn to be okay with that and to observe, not to focus on any specific thought, but to observe. It was through meditation that a lot of things were uncovered for me, a lot of things that I had purposefully, the mind had purposely sort of pushed to the background to protect me from pain. It was through meditation that I allowed myself to be with the feelings, with the memories, with the pain, and with the joys. A lot of things, I think, as someone who had a lot of capital T traumatic events as a young boy, a lot of joyful moments were also sort of um, overshadowed by the pain. So it was through meditation that I was also able to find the joy of my childhood. It was not all bad. I had really good moments with my dad, the moments that we did have. And somehow my mind had only focused on the fact that he didn't show up to the school production, that he didn't show up to the church production, that he was never there. But when he was there, we had some really good moments. We went horseback riding. And although it's not a passion of mine, it was a passion of his. Those were really good moments. And we bonded for that weekend. Um, so yeah, so absolutely, um, meditation has been one of those beautiful tools that have helped us heal and become aware of what is and what has been. Um,
Yeah, I think a big thing for me in terms of the meditation and, going back to Ryan's question of understanding the patterns of thought that I'm having, and then being a behavior specialist, understanding that, well, those can't just be independent. So let me just kind of do a little backtracking here on the patterns of my behavior, perhaps the patterns of relationships. And that leads me all the way back to my childhood of um, kind of, you know, what I was looking for, I guess, of but not knowing how to get it because I never learned how to communicate, right? And this is a whole nother portion that we'll get into, I'm sure. But yeah, it's just observing that and recognizing those patterns and realizing this isn't independent of anything else, man. This is just the time you're observing it in real time. So
Yeah. Um, Andrew, how do you know today when your inner child, when little Andrew is calling to you for attention, or healing? How do you know today? What does that sound like? What does that feel like to you today?
yeah, that's a great question. That's a tough question. Um, I guess going to Andrew inner child and Andrew adult, right? Like, yeah, I'm both and all, and so I'm just one. And so whatever I'm feeling, I'm just attributing to, one of those variations of Andrew kind of like poking me a little bit, being like, dude, wake up, wake up. You know what? Be patient. Stop talking. Give someone some love, right? Because I think one of the things for me is, and like I come on and I give talks on self-love because I had no idea what self-love was. Um, and so the most powerful thing is to give, and understanding that I'm not just giving it to others, but I'm giving it to myself because I've had to do, or again, I haven't had to do anything. I've chosen to do um, some healing work, working back through all those energetic seepages, right? All the way back to the first real one that I can remember. Um, and so when I feel alone, to answer your question, when I feel alone, and my biggest trigger is not being heard.
Mm.
And it's not being heard. And so as a special ed teacher, as a behavior specialist, as whatever I do now, like I pride myself on my honesty because it comes from here now. And when that's not being heard, I am triggered like a right. And that's me understanding that that's your little kid right there who was never heard, who was not even allowed to talk, who, if you talk, it was like you don't matter.
Mm.
So that's it right there.
It's interesting, because my biggest trigger is also feeling not heard because I was so hurt as a child.
Mm,
So now when I don't feel hurt, it's like my brain doesn't know how to process. Like, what do you mean you're not listening? What do you mean you don't care? What do you mean you for me, young young Alejandro shows up when I am really stressed out and I suddenly have this urge to watch cartoons.
mm,
And I know that is my inner child saying, pause, I got you. And it's interesting to me because usually as adults, and today we're talking about healing the inner child. And usually as adults, now that we're sort of going inward and reparenting and being the adult our inner child always needed, um, we see it as I, as an adult, show up for my inner child. And for me, although that has been very true in my journey, lately, the past year or so, has been the opposite, has been my allowing my inner child to show up for me and
Mm,
learning from the wisdom of who I was as an inner child, of going back to the play of things. I I have been um a huge daydreamer. I, as part of my coping mechanisms with the capital T traumas and the really harsh events, I would create these fantasies. And for a while I wanted to be a spy, and I had even like a subscription to Scholastic, that of like spy gear that they would send me every month. And it was real. It was real. I would go on missions to my mom's like job, and we would go to dinner with her friends, and in my head there was like some sort of meeting with the bad guy. And allowing myself now as an adult to dream again,
mm,
to allow my imagination to run wild without limits, that is something that I've learned from my inner child. Relearn, allowing myself to, when we talk about manifesting things, allowing it to truly be from the heart of who I am, not of what I want, but out of who I am, out of this abundance of love that it lives within me, that I can tap into whenever I want to, at this abundance of purpose that has always been there.
mm,
So I I know that my inner child is calling for attention or even healing I when I perceive that I might have some childish moment. And that is beautiful. I think as adults we're taught to grow up, especially for me. I wanted to grow up because being a kid was so painful. Being a kid was so it was so silencing. It was so tough. Um that I wanted to grow up. And I grew up really, really fast. And at 22, when I was a grown man with all the success in the world, the degrees and the money and the cars and the apartment and the house, at 22, I had it all and I lost it all because I had no foundation to who
mm,
I was. All I was acting. I was an amazing actor at pretending perfection. I was constantly pretending perfect, pretending that my biggest lie was I'm okay. Hey, Alex. Hey, Alejandro. How are you doing? Oh, I'm great. Biggest lie I ever told. When within, I was dying. Ryan asked, Alejandro, would you be comfortable to share what is a capital T trauma for you? So, for me in my journey, a capital T trauma or a big event that causes a traumatic aftermath was for me at the age of 5, after my stepdad passes away. A family member um, begins to sexually assault me constantly.
mm,
I This was someone who we had brought into our home to as part of their own healing journey, and they made choices, and I was a recipient to um, their own distortions um, and their choices. So I was sexually assaulted for 2 years, not at age 5, not understanding what was happening, understanding that there is emotional distress and physical distress, but with the distortion that this must be normal. Not only that, but in the same time frame, years in the year before this, my aunt, my mom's older sister, my sister, and then my stepdad passes. They all three pass away, um, for different reasons. Um, to health, all three related to health, but one, my stepdad being that he passed away in a car accident. So there I was, not understanding why people that loved me and I loved were no longer there at age 4 and 5. And I finally have this beautiful man who is bigger than life, my stepdad, who loved us, and I have, for the first time, I have a dad. I am just like my friends. We have mom and dad, and this is normal. And suddenly he is gone. As part of that journey, I become really angry as a 5-year old, and I reject the male figure. And what happened then, that I understand now, I was not only rejecting the external male figure, I began to hate myself too, because I am a boy, I am a man, and the only thing a man can do is cause pain.
Mm.
So at the
Mm.
age of 5, 6, 7, I had already a seed of hatred growing within me. And later on in life, I end up in theater school and doing theater professionally. And it was it was fairly visible that I was not the stereotypical manly boy. I was raised by women, and I had learned to talk like women and move like women. I was repeating what I learned. And I still today, not only because I'm Puerto Rican, but I talk a lot with my hands, which is not very manly for some, which is fine. No issues with that. Um, but at school, kids are kids. Um, and I must have been gay. And I had no idea what that meant. But hey, everyone said, "Oh, Alejandro, yeah, he's gay. Yeah, Alejandro, he's gay." I was in 7th grade, and I was at a theater school that we had ages 7th to 12th grade. Um, it was an art school, and two seniors during one practice decided to show me that I was gay. And at age 12, I was sexually assaulted again.
Mm.
And I knew it was wrong. And I ended up going to the security guard that same day. And the security guard asked me what happened. So I told him. And then he asked me to show him what
Mm.
happened. So again, men were not to be trusted. Men were bad and hurtful. And I am a man. So, so Ryan, to answer your question, that is the basis of what capital T trauma for me um, looked like. Um, and at age 22, I had buried all of this. I actually, what happened when I was 5, 6, and 7, I did not remember any of it. I had completely buried it until I was 18 at a party, and someone made like an approach, and everything came rushing back in. And I remembered everything. And I remember running outside of the house, and my best friend kind of was like, what the hell is going on? And he ran after me. And I just threw myself on the floor and started crying. He's like, yo, what is going on? And I, for the first time, I was like, this happened. And I just remembered. And so the healing, I again at 18, I said, nah, F this. I don't want to, I don't want to deal with this. Like I was fine before. I was good. I was already on my way to my career. And I was like, I'm good. Forget it. I'm fine. This happens, right? And at 22, I could no longer hold it in. Everything imploded, exploded. It was a huge mess. And again, I had two choices. I had the choice, okay, so we end it here and we're done, or we heal and we do the work. And and the work was tough. The work was rough and it sucked. Oh, but how beautiful it has been.
Mm.
And that's on real talk. That's on being 100% honest about about the healing journey. Those quiet moments in meditation, Andrew, sucked in the beginning. When memories would come back up, when I would out of nowhere, because in my, I had said yes to healing, and the universe, God, my own body, my own mind believed that yes. So when I would sit in the quiet space in the middle of the night and I would cross my legs because that's the right way to do it, right? Just, I would cross my legs and I would sit there in stillness and I would breathe. I had already said yes to healing. And my mind, my body, the universe was like, okay, let's go. Bam, one memory. Bam, another memory. And I'm like, nah, fuck this. I don't want to do this. This is crazy. So it has been a beautiful, all that to say that it has been a beautiful journey. That yes, it has been painful. Yes, um, it sucked in the beginning, but that's what happens when you're like tending to a wound, when the wound has been infected for so many years. There's a scraping that happens, and then the stitches. Sometimes there's no local anesthesia or anything. It's just come here. Let me use this needle of love and this thread of hope. But there's no anesthesia for this. This is raw dog in it. And yeah, yeah. So that was long winded. So I apologize, um, but thank you for your question, Ryan. Um,
Thank you for sharing that, brother.
yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Um, so we've talked about um as growing up, there was this for you, Andrew. There was this lack of the words of affirmation, the I love yous, the the hug, that physical touch that says, I'm here, I'm present, we're grounded together. Um, let's go, let's fast forward to now, um, being an adult, knowing, you know, you made the choice. I, I'm not gonna be that. I'm not gonna repeat that pattern of of not saying the I love yous, of not hugging. How does how does the decision to not continue the pattern, how does that shape who you are today, not only as Andrew the individual, not only as Andrew the partner, not only as Andrew the father, but also as Andrew the teacher, the coach, and now the meditation and breath work coach and healer that you are? How does that decision shape you now?
Wow. I think you know, the phrase "we are the teacher we're looking for," right? Like I have been coaching volleyball since I was 20 years old, right? So, and I've been teaching in the classroom since 99. And I think how I teach, maybe not how I coach volleyball, but how I teach my kids, as a special ed teacher working with a behavioral population, patient, compassionate, listening, being what I always needed for myself, but being it for my students. But when school ended and I left to go home and the door shut behind me, that Andrew didn't exist. I went home and played a role. And that is a brutal um, reality to come to when that hits. Because then it's questioning yourself of, well, I could have changed all this before had I known, right? But timing is divine, and that's it. Timing is divine, right? And there's no going back and saying, I wish I could have. I'm here now and I'm celebrating and I'm grateful and I'm forgiving of myself, right? I'm forgiving of myself for acting and behaving how I acted and behaved because that's all I knew. Um, yeah, it's ultimately being the teacher that we need.
Yeah.
And in meditation, in this process of coming to that understanding, coming to that realization is just another light bulb moment. And it's, when they happen, it's with tears of joy that because now you're understanding something. Now you're like, okay, that's another. And I have no, again, at this point, I have no idea what healing is. I have no idea like what I have no idea what I'm doing. Literally, I'm just trying not to die. I'm literally just trying not to go back. Like I'm not going backwards. How do I how do I do this? And so I'm going to do it in the place I find peace. And that's in meditation. And that's in repeating affirmations. And that's in waking up early, bringing discipline to my life, getting rid of alcohol, getting rid of drugs, changing my diet, right? And then ultimately changing the mindset from, this permanent victim and playing the permanent victim um, to stepping into owning it and owning my
Right.
power. Um, and only through vulnerability and forgiveness did I even understand what that meant.
Right.
So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah. 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 I think one of the one of the stepping stones for me to healing and to growing and to healing my inner child was um to owning the fact that I made choices even as a child, and the choices I made were based on doing the best I could at the moment.
Mm,
I know one of my biggest um, fights with myself was the fact that I didn't say anything for so many years, and I was so angry at myself. But I was just trying to survive, and that is okay. And look how far we've come. I mean, hindsight is 2020. And can things could have been done different? Who knows? Who cares? Here we are today. And then realizing that with because of my own unhealed wounds, I grew up to um not be the nicest person.
mm,
I was a straight up a-hole, arrogant could be, because I was smart, because I had the job, because I, for whatever reason, whatever excuse I had given myself to be an a-hole, I was really, really damaging towards romantic partners. owning owning those things and having the opportunity to say the I'm sorry, not to use my past as an excuse, because nothing excuses bad behavior, but to understand that the choices I've made, the choices I made were based on unhealed wounds. And yet I was still doing the best I could, the same way others did the best they could with what they had, even if that was not the healthiest. And learning to forgive myself, others, and that I learned from my inner child. I remember when I received the call that the family member who had sexually assaulted me for so many years had died. And I wanted to celebrate and I wanted to have this moment of woohoo. And all I felt was sadness. All I felt was this feeling of, look how far I've come. And there was nothing I could say or do to show this person that their actions had no longer had a hold on me. So forgiveness for me has been one of the most beautiful things I have added to my daily practice. I I there was a summer that I was working at a preschool classroom as a behavioral health observant, and one of the toddlers, young children in the classroom, had a really tough upbringing. A mom who was an addict, who in her moments of psychosis tried to drown this little girl. And I remember she would have a really hard time falling asleep. So I would sit next to her to be present while she tried to self-regulate and try to fall asleep. And the court ordered that they would have supervised visits. So whenever she would come back from lunch from the supervised visit, it was really tough those days. And one time she was learning to self-regulate, and she was having a big reaction to having had lunch with mom. And she looked at me and she said, Mr. Alex, I go by Alex everywhere else. And she goes, Mr. Alex? I said, yes, what's up? My mom has done really bad things. I said, yes, that's true. And she said, but I still love her. And in that moment, my inner child connected to the confusion. And as a child, how do we marry the pain and the love? And the choice I had at that moment was to either focus on the pain cost or the love that existed. which both can exist, and it's maybe a topic for a different day. But one of the things I've learned from young Alex, it's the ability to unconditionally love. There's something so beautiful about who I was as a child that saw beyond the actions. Um, I've we've shared this. I've had my mom here before, and we've shared that because my mom had her own baggage, and she is a human, an individual. There were times that she would spank me a little too much out of her own reactions to her own past, right? And I still, yeah, there was physical pain for me, but love was so much bigger. So, one of the things that I've learned from my inner child is the ability to love unconditionally, not to excuse or justify bad behavior, but to understand that love is the most powerful force that lives within us. Um, so, Andrew, what did your inner boy needed the most growing up?
Hmm.
I don't have tissues with me. I forgot them. So go ahead, but go ahead because I already know. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Now I look up back on this in a like with such positivity, but it was such a um life altering moment, right? You know, I've done some work around this in terms of like soul retrieval, whatever you want to call it, right? Whatever. And I was in a meditation, and the person I was working with was like, all right, go back to that moment. Now, this is just like I'm in an office space. This isn't sexualized at all. This is literally like my parent throwing me under the bus in terms of telling people that I'm lying. And it was just shocking at that moment. Like my world turned into this vacuum at that moment. But in doing the work around that, it's funny because going back and seeing my guide standing there, strong, proud, silent, just standing there, just being there and holding that space. That's it. And um, I have this one guide who shows up often, and it's always when I'm doing this work. They never say anything. They're just standing there looking at me the same way you're looking right now, just in pure acknowledgement. I see you. That's it. That's it. So to be seen, to be to be seen. That's it, man. It's that simple. I'm not, and as I'm saying all this, like it's just right, it's just flying through my head in real time. And so as a high school teacher, as a high school meditation teacher, my job is to just simply hold space. That's it. And when I'm lucky enough, when the moment arises, which at this time of the school year is often, I get to pull back and just hold space for this group of kids who are now understanding what a safe circle is, what it means to be vulnerable and share. And I just stand there or I sit and I'm watching, giving that acknowledgement or asking the guiding question. That's it. That's what I needed. I needed to be listened to, and I never was. Let me rephrase that. I felt like I never was.
Mm,
But
good. That's
I
good.
yeah, and that's a big difference because I've had this conversation with my parents, and that in their mind never happened. The situation never happened, and except it's clear as day to me, right? It's clear as day to me where I, in that moment, took responsibility for a parent's actions. And so from that point forward, I took responsibility for everyone's actions
Mm,
as I was in no fear of any consequences. Because what can be worse than losing trust and faith in your trusted adult? So in that moment, I feel like there was part of me that became so reckless that nothing could ever happen to me in terms of responsibility and taking it for other people. What are you going to do? Yell at me? You're going to punish me? You're going to, like, you're a principal. Like, what's going to happen to me? Nothing's going to happen to me. Police, not nothing. And it was just reinforced for the remainder of my adolescence into my teenage years. It was just reinforced over and over and over again. And until it wasn't, until it wasn't. And the universe spoke loudly and clearly, and I'm grateful for that. But to be able to go back to that moment and see what Andrew needed at that time, that's it. That's it. Simple. I needed to be listened to, and I needed to be seen and valued. And that's what our young people need, is to be listened to. They need to be asked, what do you need? What do you want? And we need to listen and not tell them what they need and what they want, but to listen and then work our hardest to implement and not discourage or disparage. Um, so yeah, that.
yeah. I I'll answer the same for me. I young Alejandro, baby Alejandro, needed to know that he was enough just as he was, even with the pain and the hurt and the anger. I needed to know that it was okay to be angry, that it was okay to to feel whatever it was that I was feeling, that it was okay to not have things figured out. One of the things that happened when my stepdad passes away is I saw the distress in my mom. A few months before, her daughter had passed away. Months before that, her sister had passed away. So my mom was also going through a lot. So I decided as a 5-year old that I was not going to give my mom more pain. So I buried it all. And what I needed the most was for someone to tell me that it was okay to feel. And this is all I went through years of psychological treatment. I went to child psychologist and nothing came up. My ability to bury my pain was so strong. And as an adult, I understand that I became so good at not showing pain out of love, because I loved my mom so much that I just didn't want her to suffer. So, what I needed the most as a 5 year old was for someone to say, it's okay to feel whatever it is that you're feeling. Let it all out. So, now as an adult, whenever I feel confused, whenever I feel lost, whenever I feel that anxiety might be creeping in, I find the meditation cushion, the sofa, the floor, the ground. I live in the desert, so the dirt, there's no grass here. It's just dirt. I find the dirt and I say, Alex, Alejandro, it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling. And we feel and we feel and we begin to not only sit with our feelings, but we begin to understand why it is that I'm feeling whatever I'm feeling. And then I can tackle it however I want to tackle it, if I want to tackle it, because it is a choice. Sometimes I just have to feel, not fix, not amend, just feel. Um, so Andrew, if there was one thing you could tell anyone who is wanting to do some inner child healing, if there's one thing, one advice or a guiding word that you could give, what would that be?
Wow, there's so many, man. Like, I didn't start this to heal an inner child, right? I just wanted to stop the pain from the dissolution of my marriage, right? Of, you know, when this occurred when I'm 48, and you just brought this up, um, I felt, right? I felt for the first time because from a very young age, I was just numbing because I had no outlet. I had no way to communicate. I didn't know how to communicate. Um, because even if I did, or this probably goes back to a time I haven't remembered yet of sharing and someone saying, nobody cares. And, so what do you do with that? You cry in your pillow, you know, go for a walk and cry, and you're like, what, you know, pretty probably typical adolescent or young adolescent stuff. And but having gone sober 4.5 years ago, because I could feel, because I didn't want to lose that ability to feel, um, then the clarity comes, right? The clarity comes, and then understanding the pain you're in, and then understanding patterns. You know, I guess to answer your question is be present, right? Just be present, and that healing journey will lead you to wherever it needs to go. And if that means it leads you to your inner child, then that's fine. If that leads you to trauma number one, then that's great, right? I can't, envision for however many years ago saying I want to heal my inner child. Like, no, because I probably thought I grew up fine. I probably thought I had everything, and I was just, the black sheep of the family who, you know, did everything opposite of everyone else or spoke their mind, and just regardless of being heard, right? Was just an attention seeker. And any attention is good attention, and so I'm just seeking attention any way I can, and disrespecting anyone and everyone in my life or my parents' life so that I got attention. Um in terms of identifying the need to go back and heal, that was through therapy, man. I'm telling, like, in collaboration with doing spiritual work that I didn't really know I was doing, right? But both my teacher and my therapist are saying the same exact things to me, and they don't know each other. Um, but to just heal in the moment you're in, and to, you know, for me, it was just, I want to feel better. I want to feel better, but I know I'm not going to numb because that's the easy way out. But because I'm feeling and I don't like the way I'm feeling, I want to heal this. I want to make this better. I just want to be better. And so that was meditation for me, because in meditation, I came to understand who I was, who Andrew was. And that brought me all the way back to how I was before everything got piled on. And with that, you come back to the curiosity of the child. You come back to the awe of childhood. You come back to the belief that people are good that the child has. And we all have that moment when life gets put on us in varying states of capitalization, right? And for me, it was always about being present and being where I am because I was moving forward. But then, in fully understanding the teachings, is that I can only move forward if I heal the backward. And in that understanding, there was this, I don't even know, man, this excitement, this desire to delve in as deep as I could into the fucking darkness, into the depths of my soul and say, bring it on. I want it. Because I've looked in the mirror, I've owned my shit, I've done my work. I know there's more work to do, but I'm not running from this. This is the toughest thing I've ever had to do, which is to own my shit and to move forward from that. And so if that means I'm going after my darkness, then I started going after my darkness and, doing that soul work and that shadow work and, just being a sponge for any and all lessons and then putting them into practice. And while I'm a teacher, I was the worst student ever, man. I was the worst student ever in high school, in college, and then I did my master's, and then all of a sudden it's like things changed, right? Things changed. And um And again, divine timing, man. Just be where you are and be present and trust your process. And one of the things that I learned was trust my gut. My gut told me all those years ago that shit ain't right, and I suppressed it. And now I trust my gut. And now I trust my heart. And I know that when my mind starts getting involved and I start thinking through a solution, I need to stop and breathe and meditate and go back to my heart and then let the heart lead.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you took my word of advice, which is be present.
Yeah.
Be present. Just be present. Um, and know that once you say yes to healing, the universe, God, your guides, your mind, your heart, your spirit, your soul, they all believe that yes. So continue to be present in the journey. Will the journey get tough? Absolutely. Yes. There's this song that says, "What's up, danger?" Like, what up? So when you mention this hunger to go deeper into the depths of the darkness, whatever that might be, that came to mind. Like, what's up? Like, what's up, danger? Because at the end of the day, whatever is in that darkness, we've already lived with it. It's nothing new to who we are. Whatever we're, the wound has always been there. The pain has always been there. Looking at it only makes it present. But it is while looking at it that we can heal, because we've been ignoring it, but the pain continues to be there. The the ignoring the pain does not make it go away.
No.
We might use whatever we want to use to numb it, but the pain is still there. Um, so Andrew, if it's okay with you, as as we bring this conversation to a close, I would like us to to guide ourselves, and I know the live audience here and whoever is listening to this podcast episode, to ground ourselves. I know today has had some heavy conversations, and some heavy topics. So before we ended, um, if it's okay with you, I know this. I'm just throwing this at you right now. We didn't discuss this. Would you guide us to the beginning of some grounding practice, and then I'll pick up wherever you leave it off, and we can guide ourselves to a
Hmm.
little bit more of a grounded state. I know we again we've discussed a lot of things, and as we discuss this, I know um some feelings might be activated, and that's okay. Um but yeah, would you give us the honor of guiding us through just something really short, something really sweet?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. What an honor. Yeah, thank you. So wherever you are, just kind of if you're sitting, if you're laying, close your eyes. If you're sitting and you can put your feet on the floor, super. If you're driving or doing anything else, and just kind of be present with us and share the energy. So if your eyes are closed, just all of us all at once take a nice inhale through the nose, feel the belly all the way up to the collarbones. And then let that breath go through the mouth. And we'll do one more of those. Inhale and exhale. And then just breathe normally and naturally, whatever is comfortable for you. And just bring the power of observation to the breath as you're inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the mouth or the nose. And just follow the breath. And bring the power of your observation to where the breath resonates with you. Maybe it's the cool inhale on the nostrils, the belly filling up, or the chest rising. And maybe the breath resonates with you on the warm exhale, the shoulders and chest releasing, and the belly coming back to resting. And there's no right or wrong place. Just simply see and observe where the breath resonates with you. And if you can, if your eyes are closed, and if they're not, that's fine. Just pick something in front of you and softly gaze at it. But if your eyes are closed, bring your attention to the middle of your forehead, directly above your eyebrows. As you continue to breathe normally and naturally. And on your next exhale, focus your attention to the middle of your forehead. As you exhale, And inhale again. And now on this exhale, bring about a sense of weightlessness, floating on a cloud, on the water. Just allow that sense of weightlessness to continue as you inhale and exhale. Now start to prolong or elongate your inhales to a count of 4. In your exhale, nice, slow, and gentle to a count of 6. And come right back to the inhale. And right out with the exhale. Just continue that for a couple more rounds of breath. And remember on the exhale to bring about that sense of weightlessness as you focus on the middle of your forehead. After your next exhale, take a nice, big, deep, refreshing inhale. Fill the belly again all the way up to the collarbones. Hold that breath at the top and simply say this to yourself silently. Thank you. I love you. And let that breath go through the mouth. And come back to breathing normally and naturally. Thank you. I love you. A gentle reminder to give to yourself first, gratitude and love, so that we may continue to offer and give gratitude and love to those in our lives. Whenever you're ready, you can gently flutter your eyes open. Thank you. I love you.
Mm. Ah, thank you. Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you for being here. Thank you for holding space. Thank you for the work you do. And thank you for saying yes to the healing journey, not only for yourself, but for those of us who get to witness and experience it with you. I know you were the first meditation coach and teacher that I ever saw cry in a live session. And when I started my live sessions, you gave me permission to be just as I was, um, and to be as vulnerable as I needed to be for the space and for the time. So again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for thank you for showing up
Mm.
authentically. And it's truly an honor to have you as part of my own healing journey. Um, to everyone who has been watching live or watching and listening to the recording, thank you so much for being here. We see you and we hold space for you. You're not alone in your healing journey. You are loved, you are supported, and you're always, always enough.
Mm.
You are loved, you are supported, you're always, always enough. You have not been left behind. You are becoming. you are becoming. Stay healing, stay growing, and thank you so much for being here. Until next time.